Hi, and welcome to part 2 of how to shop for the Mediterranean diet. Now, in part 1 of this video, which I will link up above here, we talked about things that I buy on repeat, so things that I buy every single week that I go through rather quickly. In this video, the list is a little bit longer, but it's things that I keep on hand, so they're pantry items. Things that last a little bit longer, but are very important for the Mediterranean diet, and I think you will enjoy them for their flavor and for the benefits that they offer. So let's get right into it. The first item on my list is olive oil. Now, olive oil is probably one of the most important ingredients for the Mediterranean diet. So you can cook with it, you can drizzle it on salads, you can use it in just about anything. You probably don't need to have any other oil in the house besides olive oil. I also like to have eggs around, so I eat eggs maybe once or twice a week for breakfast, or I may use them in a recipe or two, but I don't really go through them that often. So I will buy eggs, but it's not something that I have to buy every week. Beans are also an important ingredient to have in the Mediterranean diet. You can buy them in cans and keep them on your shelf. I like to keep around cannellini beans and chickpeas and pinto beans and black beans. They're all really healthy for you, and as you know, the Mediterranean diet limits the amount of meat that you can eat, so beans are a healthy substitute to offer fiber, protein, and all the good things that you need. I also buy celery, onions, carrots, and that's pretty much my basis for any soup that I make. I usually start with celery, onions, and carrots, and garlic, and so I keep those items around all the time. So I buy a bag of onions. They can keep in the pantry for a long time, actually. And things like carrots you can keep in the refrigerator, and celery, you don't use them all the time, but they're things that you want to have around, and they're good flavorings for soups and stews, or even to put in salads and things like that. I also keep mushrooms around. You can use mushrooms in pasta dishes, again in salads, in soups. There's so many things you can do with mushrooms. You can make a little mushroom omelet for breakfast. They're really good for you. Another thing that you don't need to buy all the time, but it's nice to have on hand. Potatoes. Don't be afraid of potatoes. We talked about carbs in the first video and how you don't really need to fear carbs. A lot of people are afraid of the white foods. Potatoes are good for you, and you're probably not going to eat them every single day, so it's not something that you have to buy weekly, and they last a long time in the pantry. So keep potatoes around. They're very filling, and you can use them in a variety of ways. You can just roast them in the oven with some rosemary, and they're so good. I also like to keep around chicken broth and vegetable broth. I use them as flavorings in things that I'm making, or sometimes I use them as a soup base. You can use them for all kinds of things, and they last a long time as well. And you're not going to go through it like every week, but you can open them, you can keep them in the refrigerator, you can pour a little into your pasta sauce, or if you're going to make a one-off pasta where you're not making tomato sauce and you're making something with like a vegetable base, you can put in a little vegetable broth and add a little flavor and moisture to your meals. Or if you want to make soups, you can start with the base of chicken broth or vegetable broth, whatever you prefer. If you like to be more vegetarian, you can use the vegetable broth. Chicken broth adds a great flavor to soups. Even if you're using different vegetables to make like a creamy carrot soup, you can use chicken broth and it'll add a nice flavor to it. So keep broths on hand as well, and you're not going to go through them again super rapidly, but they're nice to have around. Pasta. Ooh, don't be afraid of pasta. We're all carb crazy in this country, and you really don't need to be. I was just reading a study about pasta. It's very important how you cook it. So the package instructions always say how to make it al dente, and really it's healthier for you if you make it al dente. If you overcook pasta where it gets kind of soft and mushy, that's when it becomes something that's more high glycemic. So I don't know the scientific facts behind that, but it's something that I read recently and it really resonated with me. And also, in the Mediterranean, they don't eat pasta in the large quantities that we eat in the United States. It's really a starter dish. So it's more like an appetizer, a small portion of pasta that leads into your regular meal. So it's really about the quantities of it and how it's prepared. So don't be afraid of pasta. There's all kinds of fun things you can do with pasta. And just like pasta, do not be afraid of rice. I keep rice around often too. I like to keep arborio rice around for when I make something like risotto, but I also like to have long grain rices around, and I'm particularly fond of jasmine rice. So you can add rice to vegetable dishes to fill you up a little bit more. You can buy brown rice, you can buy whole grain rice, you can buy wild rice. There are all kinds of varieties of rice out there that you can buy to add to your meals. Flour, just regular all-purpose flour, is something to have in your pantry. Again, it's a white food. You don't have to buy whole wheat flour or anything, because I don't really use flour a lot, but I might, if I'm making chicken, I might dip the chicken in it on both sides before I cook it, just to add a little thickness to the sauce. So I don't use a lot of flour all the time, but it's something good to have around. Even if you just need to thicken up a sauce or something like that. I don't do a lot of baking with the flour, but it's something to have in the pantry that you can use as an enhancement to your meals. Cheese. Now, it's another thing that I don't have to buy weekly, but I love cheese. So sometimes I buy different kinds of cheeses that I'll just cut up into little cubes that I'll use as a snack with some fruit or some vegetables. Or I like to put cheese into some dishes. So I'd like to melt it on a little pasta, or buy Parmesan cheese or Romano cheese and sprinkle it on top of pasta. There are all kinds of cheeses out there that you can buy to enhance your meals. Dried herbs. Now, we talked about fresh herbs in part 1 of this shopping video series, but dried herbs are also great to have around. You can keep them in the pantry for a long time. I like to have things like oregano and basil and garlic powder, and I like to buy a blend that's an Italian blend that has a lot of things mixed in. I like to have red pepper flakes around, salt and pepper. I mean, these are the kind of things you want to have in your pantry that you can flavor your meals with, and they can really enhance a dish. So have some dried herbs around and get used to using them. Another item I like to have around in the pantry is honey. Now, I don't use honey often, but it's great if you have a sore throat. You can just take a teaspoon of honey, or it's great on breakfast cereals. Sometimes I'll make polenta in the morning for breakfast and I'll put some fruit and I'll drizzle a little honey. It's important to buy raw honey and to be careful that you really are buying honey, because some of the honey that you find in the supermarket, they're allowed to call it honey, but it's not really honey. It's a combination of corn syrup and high fructose corn syrup. So make sure you're buying real honey and that it's raw honey. And I think it's a great way to add a little sweetness to your meal without just putting sugar on everything. Last but not least on my list for today is vinegar. You can buy red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar. There are all kinds of vinegars you can have. They last a really long time in your pantry. You can use them in salads, of course, but you can also use them to flavor things. You can marinate chicken in them, you can marinate fish, you can sprinkle them on little things and just add a little flavor, and they last a long time. And I think that is all I have for you today. So that is my list of pantry staples to have around on the Mediterranean diet. So I wish you luck in your Mediterranean journey. If you have any questions for me, put them down below. Don't forget to watch part 1 of the video. I will link it up here somewhere, and I'll also link it down below. So thank you for joining me. I hope this helps, and I will see you next time. Bye!